Yo, what's good, guys? We are back at it again with another MLB The Show video for you guys. In today's video, I'm going to be going over my favorite lineups towards the last 10 days of this season. I know a lot of you guys are either making late split ranked pushes for like World Series, stuff like that, or you're just playing some games trying to get a free Posada, free Arrieta. Obviously, the better you do, the quicker you get those cards. So I'm going to walk you guys through my favorite lineups to run these last few days of the season. So real quick before we hop into it, I want to thank you guys for 7,000 subs. Absolutely huge milestone for the channel. One I didn't know if we would ever hit. So I want to thank you guys for that. We had some technical difficulties, so we've been a little spotty the last week, but we should be back now. And yeah, so let's hop into it. Left field for me got Profar. I think there's not really a knock on him other than the defense. His defense isn't awesome. He is going to get picked on a lot if you play at fields kind of like Laughing Mountain. Maybe not at Coors, but just those bigger outfield, especially fields with huge left fields. He's going to get picked on. He's not the fastest, doesn't have the best reaction. And his power is not awesome, but his swing is, and he's always going to give you the biggest PCI. So I think if you're a legend player, if you are a Hall of Fame player that's not super comfortable with your PCI sizes, then he's an awesome option. Obviously plays a ton of positions as well. You don't have to stick him in left field. Center field, for me, it's Rollins. It's a little gimmicky. I'm not sure if all of you guys will be comfortable running him there, but I can tell you from personal experience, he is fine there. There are some balls that he gets really, really bad jumps on, but usually the speed is enough to kind of catch up to it. If you used kind of that live series Mike Trout at the start of the year, especially on the Buxton team, it's very similar to that, where he's going to get some really bad jumps and he's going to make some balls that should be relatively easy, hard to play just because of the bad jump, but usually the speed and the arm strength kind of make up for it. Obviously, if you want to switch him and Nico, you can definitely do that. Ketel Marte in right. So for me personally, doesn't play really any worse defense than the guy like Larry Walker does. So I really enjoy this card. Obviously, switch hitter with an awesome swing and absolutely crushes lefties, which is kind of the meta of starting pitching in this game. So Ketel Marte, awesome option. I think he's kind of a must pick up because he's in all of these lineups that I'm about to show you. He is very good. Babe at first, is there any debate, any doubt? If you don't have Babe, there's always some other options. Not really at first. First base is a really weak position. You can see there's like nobody I would really consider running here. Maybe Brad Miller, maybe Edgar, and then we're out of options already. So for maybe Castellanos, but it's a weaker position in general. If you have that new Adley and you're running Posada, Adley, and Santana, then one of them is going to have to play first base, and it cannot be Adley. So you're going to have to run with those other ones at first base. So that may be a avenue that you want to go if that kind of describes you and your situation. So second base, for me, it's Mookie Betts. But if you like Brian Roberts a lot, you can run him. If you like Eduardo Escobar a lot, you can run him. Gunner's not too bad. And then Brooks Lee is super nice on the switch team. Shortstop, for me, it's Nico. I'm going to get into kind of my rationale real quick. For me, I want those tall, freaky shortstops like Ellie De La Cruz, like the athletic freaks that are super tall and kind of fall on everything. That's kind of what I want at shortstop. Nico is kind of the closest we get to that right now. He's 6'3", has really good reaction. So he kind of cuts off a lot of those balls that would be kind of really bad hits up the middle. Obviously, with the way the game plays this year, you can't get all of them, but he gets a lot more than a guy like Rollins gets just because he's a lot taller than. So for me, that's why I'm running him at short and Rollins in center. For me, at third, George Brett, I want to use this card. I locked in for him collection-wise, obviously. But if you want to sit here and make the argument that Eduardo Escobar on the Tier 2 switch boost is just as good, if not better, because he's a switch hitter, then I would hear you out there. And then you almost should just go full switch hitter at that point. So real quick, if you want to run this exact lineup, you're probably going to want to kind of do this with the bench. I think there's 4 or 5 options right now that are switch hitters that throw lefty. So this is going to help you out. It's going to contribute to both the Santana and Kershaw boosts at the same time. If you haven't been doing this, this can kind of revolutionize the way you build your lineup. Starting pitchers, the regular here. We got Pettit, Lee, Kershaw, Randy, John. You can make the argument that Randy and John have fallen behind hits wise a little bit, and you're definitely not wrong. I think the real problem with these two are the walks through them. Just having those huge bars are kind of an issue, but they're still very good. All right, Randy's still throwing 108, and John still has the best pitch mix in the game. But if you want to work in a guy like Bobby Miller or DeGrom or one of those other guys that are lefties that are righty pitchers, then you could definitely do that, and those would not be bad options. Bullpen wise, I'm only going to go over the full bullpen once because I think that's all that's necessary. Devin Williams, I still like Bard, but there's other guys. If you want somebody else that has an outlier sinker like Trinan or like Suarez or Loizaga, then they are there. Not bad options. Probably wouldn't do Graveman just because he doesn't actually have outlier. So kind of fake news on his 95-mile-an-hour sinker there. If you enjoy a guy like Dibble and you want him to get the Kershaw boost, you can do that. He'll get 125 hits at P2. So not a bad option if you kind of want that archetype of pitcher. Or if you just want to go one up, if you're running Eduardo Escobar at third and you want to one up it, you can put Kenley in there to give you the full tier switch boost. Not too bad of an idea, but he is kind of a bad pitcher. Adam Ottavino, obviously maxing out the switch boost or contributing to the switch boost, I guess is the better term. So you can see his hits are very good. I believe the switch boost also boosts pitching control. So if I did put in a guy like Kenley, then Ottavino would get even better. He's 78 control. So it's kind of big for him, not too big for Kenley. John Franco, still one of the better lefty options in the game, in my opinion. Raleigh Fingers, still very good on higher difficulties where you can just dot that four seam, that sinker, and throw away forkballs and away sliders and just shrink your opponent's PCI. He's still very good in that regard. Loop, I think I like a little more than a guy like Hobie Milner. Milner's more gimmicky, more volatile, I feel like. Whereas Loop is just, you know what you're getting, and either your opponent's going to hit him decently well or they're not going to touch him. I think I prefer that more than a guy like Hobie Milner. Bummer, still probably the best lefty. If you want to argue he's not the best lefty reliever, then he's definitely the least volatile. He's the most normal reliever. Has a 5-pitch mix, a good 5-pitch mix. And he's just a normal reliever, but he's still somehow one of the better lefties we've gotten all season. And then for me personally, I like Jorge Lopez. When I've used this card, he's been very dominant for me. As far as outlier sinker guys go, this is probably my favorite guy all year. There's some other guys worth mentioning that we'll get into when I kind of do a binder check at the end of this. But for now, that's the lineup. So this is the full switch team. If I was running the full switch team, I wanted to lean into it. Let the demons win, then this is what I would be running. Cattell in left, Rollins in center. Wensil in right is a new addition that wasn't in the other lineup. In my opinion, he kind of needs the full tier switch to get that really high clutch and to balance out his contact against righties, because without it, he is really bad against righties. But with it, you're seeing he's very usable even on a difficulty like Legend. Babe Ruth at first still. Kind of one of my two open slots for this lineup, him and Mookie. But if you want to use those somewhere else and throw a guy like Eduardo Escobar at like second and somebody else at first, then you could definitely do that. Obviously, not everybody has Babe Ruth, so there's definitely options there. Still Nico at short, Eduardo at third, Jorge at catcher, and then DH, and then Santana at catcher because of the higher arm. But if you like the higher blocking, then that's probably your guy. Again, if you have Adley Rutschman, then you're probably running that trio, and you're going to want to catch Adley and get one of these other guys on first. Bench is still the same. Starters are still the same. Just wanted to show off the switch hitting lineup. If I was doing a full switch team, this is how I would do it. And then our final lineup is just kind of high overall mixed with the captain boost. So still running the Santana captain, still have Marte in the outfield, right? Like I said, he's in every single lineup. If Mookie Betts didn't exist, he would for sure be my second baseman. So that's a great spot for him. If you are somebody who you missed out on Rollins, you're just not going to be able to get him XP wise, you could definitely run Mookie at short and Cattell at second. That would be very viable. Willie Mays in center, the best statted center fielder in the game. It's kind of up in the air whether or not you'll be able to use his swing. One of the few batters I've used this year where you just get in some really uncomfortable situations with him, where you just feel like you either can't hit or you just know what's coming and you're not going to be able to hit it anyway. Very reminiscent of like Gold Louis Bob if you've used that card in co-op a lot or in BR and you are facing somebody with an outlier sinker. It's like, ooh, this is going to be a rough at bat. You have those with Willie Mays. Something about his swing. I believe he's an opposite field hitter also, which shrinks his inside timing window even more. Not my favorite card in the game, but statistically, definitely the best center fielder. If you can make him work, he's going to give you basically unparalleled value in center field and will be a decent wild card option moving into next season. In right field, Larry Walker. I don't love this card just because it's really rough lefty-lefty with him, but righties he absolutely demolishes, and defensively very good. First base for me, it's Babe, obviously. Other than that, CJ Cron's usable. I don't love his swing on paper. It should be a lot better than what it is. Fielder is usable. The new Freddie Freeman's usable. But for me personally, I'm probably looking either like a Brad Miller or an Edgar Martinez, somebody like that. Maybe even a Harmon Killebrew if I'm on a lower difficulty. Somebody like that. Or you could always, you can just bring out Posada again. Another good option. You can see everything kind of gets back to the Switch team. Even when you go out of your way to run just high overall cards, a lot of it goes back to being the Switch team. So second base for me, it's Mookie. If you want to run like Wenzel here or Honus Wagner, then you definitely could. But for me, it's definitely Mookie. His swing is insane. Has some of the better quirks in the game. For me, he's my second baseman for sure. Shortstop, we are running Rollins here. I'm not running Nico Goodrum. I think just straight up, who's the better player? It's definitely Rollins. Obviously, Nico, I think, gives you a little bit better defense at shortstop. But I like Rollins' bat a whole lot more than a guy like Nico Goodrum's bat. Third base for me is George Brett. Obviously, gets diamond defense. George always kind of has fake defense, though. He always plays third bad. I don't know if it's because he's I guess he throws righty, so it's not even because he's a lefty. I'm not sure why. Him and Chipper Jones always have kind of the fakest defense in the game. But this year, George Brett has made some of the best plays I've seen a third baseman make, and he's made some of the worst. So really, it's a dice roll with him. You don't really know what you're getting, but you do know you're getting an awesome swing, and you're always going to have the biggest PCI possible. So that's a big plus if you play on higher difficulties. Obviously, he is very good. DH, I'm running Eduardo Escobar. You could definitely make the argument if you prefer a guy like Posada. You can run Posada here. You could run the new Gunner here. You could run Adley Rutschman if you have that card. There's an infinite number of possibilities for DH. If you just want a pure DH, you could go get Jordan. You could go get Jesse Winker. Two really good just hitter options. Obviously, those are exclusively lefties, so it's going to be hard to kind of bat with them all the time. But always a good option. Other than that, other switch guys on the bench I kind of have contributing just to get the tier 2 boost. We have Ian Happ, basically Corey Seager. So if you enjoyed Seager for all of last season when he was actually still good, then Ian Happ is kind of similar to him. You can run him at second, run him at third. Absolutely demolishes righties, kind of struggles against lefties, doesn't have the best clutch. Very Corey Seager-ish in my opinion. Brooks Lee, super good card. Basically Ian Happ, but you're trading a little bit of power for a lot of contact. So Brooks Lee is still a really good option if you are still running this card. Profar, who we had in the first team, is still very good and plays a ton of positions. Like if you didn't have Babe Ruth, you could run him at first. It's probably not the best value in the world to do that just because he doesn't have the power that you would like a first baseman to have. But definitely an option, definitely on the board. And then Brian Roberts, I'm not the biggest fan just because he flies out a lot for me. But if you really like his swing and if you're hitting a lot of perfects, then it doesn't really matter that he only has 80 power. Starting pitching wise, this is a little different. If you just telling me that you want to use some of the better cards in the game, I don't think you want to run that Kershaw boost because John and Randy without the boost aren't the best in the world. So for me personally, Pettit, Lee, CC Sabathia, Kerry Wood, and Satchel Paige. But if you want to run DeGrom, if you want to run the new Kodai Senga, if you want to run some of the cards, other cards that I'll go over towards the end of this video, you could definitely do that. And then bullpen wise, it's more or less the same. I have Kenley in there just to lock down the tier 2 boost. Don't really love him. They did fix his pitch tipping, so it's not the end of the world. He's still kind of BP just because he has a subpar pitch mix, and that's just what it is. But your opponent doesn't know exactly what pitch is coming like they did in the past. So that is kind of all of our lineups. I'll go over some other cards that I think are kind of worth using. We'll just sort by 99s, and I'll just let you know. Byron Buxton, really good, right? This is kind of an upgraded version of the Cornerstone Captain we all use at the start of the season. And more or less the same stuff applies. If you are still an all-star player, or if you are still a Hall of Fame player, this is a very good card to run. If you're on Legend, I'd probably stay away from him. Brad Miller, still very good to use. Basically up budget Babe Ruth. Poor man's Babe Ruth, not a bad card at all. Trinan, like I said, if you just want another guy with outlier sinker, he's one of your better options, especially for free. Whit Merrifield, kind of a slept-on card. This new Diego as a pitcher, not really great. As a hitter, not really great. But obviously his swing's really good. Renfroe, if you're an all-star player, Renfroe is all you could want and then more. Like I said, Gunner's all right. Rich Gossage, this is a really good reliever. If you want an outlier four-seam guy, it's always good to have one of them in the pen. And Rich Gossage actually has some other pitches other than just an outlier four-seam. He's not Dibble by any means. Then he is a very good option there. Max Clark still isn't too bad at this point of the season. Skeens, still usable. Probably grossly overpriced for what he is, but still usable. Johnny Cueto, if you're on higher difficulty, definitely usable. Marcelo Mayer, we were in a kind of similar spot last year with him where everybody had Ellie, so you never saw this card, but on paper, he was like the second best shortstop in the game. He's in a very similar spot. I'm not going to say he's the second best right now. I think Story's probably a little bit better than him. But personally, I think he is really good, and I think if you want to use this card, you definitely can. Robert Suarez, not a bad option at all. If you want an outlier sinker guy with a solid pitch mix and great control, then he is that. If you want a guy that has really high speed differentials, then he's not that. Wade Boggs, always worth mentioning. Not super awesome, not somebody I would really run, especially if you're on like All-Star. If you're on Hall of Fame and you're not comfortable with the smaller PCIs, or if you are new to Legend and you're not comfortable with the smaller PCIs, then I think he's a decent option. His quirks can kind of make his power play up a little bit, but still not somebody I love. Sandy, not a bad option, especially if you're at low ranks. If you are at lower ranks where you can just spam that outlier sinker and your opponent will never catch up to it, then he's really good. If you're playing on higher ranks and people kind of isolate the outlier sinker and prioritize hitting it, not going to have fun. Fielder, again, like I said, kind of worth running. Stargell, not too bad. Kodai Senga, very good option. Does fit the Kershaw boost, so if you want a righty that fits that boost, he gets really high hits with the Kershaw boost. Put some parallels on him. Not a bad option there. Story, like I said, probably the second best shortstop in the game behind Rollins, so not a bad option at all. If the switch hitting team wasn't disgustingly broken, I'd probably be running Story. Garrett Kroll, not terrible. Definitely overpriced for what he is, but not terrible. Aaron Judge, this card looks really good. I'm a sucker for Aaron Judge. I think he has one of the best swings that he's had ever in the show. This year, really good swing. And you can look at the stats. Super great for All-Star. Relatively good for Hall of Fame. The only question mark may arise on Legend. But even then, with that swing and that power and the quirks that he has, and him not actually being a negative in the field, this is a really good card and almost worth 100K in my opinion. JD, pure DH, Luis Matos, very good card. You're going to want to either play him as a corner outfielder or kind of as a DH. You're not going to want him in center field, but not bad. Ryan Jeffers, as far as a free card concerned, is not too bad. The new Chirrillo, don't really love his swing ever, and him being a primary right fielder kind of sucks. Let's see, anybody else? Hank Thompson, a little overpriced, but you know, for 40K, that's all right. That's fine. Jack of all trades, master of none, doesn't really excel at anything, but is an all-around player that can also play a ton of positions. So he's kind of the ultimate utility guy Don't really know how much value that brings in a game like the show. But in real life, he would be a crazy player. Colson Montgomery, obviously, very solid. If you like that spring training one at the very start of the year, he has the same swing and whatnot, and he is very tall at shortstop, so he's actually going to play halfway decent defense. Probably a little overpriced for what he is, but overall, not a bad option at all. PCA, I'd stay away from that card. Yuri Perez, I'd probably stay away from that card. KB, Chris Bryant is really, really good. If you want to make the argument that he is better in right field than a guy like Larry Walker or better than Wenceel Perez or somebody like that, I would listen to that argument all day. KB always has a crazy good swing. Obviously doesn't have any quirks this year, but not even a bad defender. So he's worth a shout, especially at first and third. If you don't have somebody like Babe Ruth, he can easily fill that gap. Miggy Sano also kind of first and third, can fill that Babe Ruth role. More of kind of an all-star demon card or Hall of Fame. If you're super comfortable in Legend, Miggy Sano always kind of has a really good swing, and you can definitely make that card work. Screwball, not bad. Let's see, who else? I don't want to draw it out too long. Jake Arrieta, pretty good. Obviously, he's a World Series reward. Doesn't mean they're always great, but usually World Series rewards this year are good cards. Loaizaga, mentioned him if you want an outlier sinker guy. Rengifo on the switch team, if you need another switchback, can be really, really good. Very similar to a guy like Wenceel Perez. Matt Carpenter, still not a bad option. Ozzy Albies, if you're running the full switch team, I think is still viable. If you're running tier 1 or tier 2, I probably wouldn't mess with him too much. But on the full switch team, I think he's still super viable. DeGrom, already mentioned him. Mike Cameron, I'd probably get away from at this point. Yoan, not terrible. Luis Gil, not very good. And I think that's it. I think that's relatively it. I don't want to draw it out too long. Dustin May, Bobby Miller, still decent cards. Cal Raleigh, still halfway usable on the full switch team. But yeah, guys, that is kind of all the lineups I wanted to go over for these last 10-ish days of ranked. Till next time.